Across 12 conquered star systems, billions feared one being. Admirals whispered her name before battles. Entire civilizations surrendered at the mere arrival of her fleet. She was the alien queen, architect of an empire so efficient that wars often ended before the first shot was fired. And tonight she had summoned a human for mating. Daniel Foster adjusted the collar of his diplomatic jacket for the 6th time and stared at his reflection in the shuttle's polished bulkhead. He looked exactly like what he was, a mid-level diplomatic analyst whose greatest professional achievement involved negotiating a ceasefire between two lunar mining unions arguing over vending machine pricing. He was not a soldier. He was not a hero. He was, unfortunately, the only human who had ever successfully convinced a hostile species to sign anything without threatening them first. Which was why he now held a slim case containing 3 legal folders, a tablet loaded with a carefully rehearsed presentation titled Interstellar Cooperation Framework, and a backup flash drive labeled in bold letters, Treaty Final _V7 Real Final. Mating, he muttered to himself, tapping the case. Ceremonial language is common in hierarchical empires. Symbolic bonding. Probably an exchange of oaths. Maybe shared blood samples if they're dramatic. The shuttle shuddered as it descended through violet clouds toward the throne world below. Outside the viewport, the capital spread across the planet like a living constellation. Structures spiraled upward in impossible geometries, grown rather than built, their surfaces gleaming like obsidian glass. Warships hovered silently in orbit, not guarding the world so much as announcing that resistance was pointless. Daniel swallowed. "Remain calm," he whispered. "You prepared for this." He had even practiced his handshake. Firm, respectful, not dominant. The shuttle doors opened without a sound. A delegation waited, tall, armored figures with smooth, pearl-toned skin and eyes that reflected light like mirrors. None spoke. None needed to. Their mere stillness carried the weight of absolute discipline. Daniel offered a polite nod. One of them inclined their head precisely 3 degrees, then turned. He followed them through corridors that curved like the inside of a shell. The palace didn't feel constructed, it felt grown, as if the planet itself had decided to become a monument to power. Banners hung from the vaulted ceilings, except they weren't cloth. They shimmered faintly, holographic recreations of defeated fleets dissolving into dust on endless loops. "Subtle," Daniel murmured. At least the projector in his case hadn't been confiscated. A good sign. Empires that allowed presentations were empires open to negotiation. Eventually, the guards stopped before a set of towering doors that parted like liquid shadow. "Enter," one said. The throne chamber was enormous but not cluttered. No gaudy treasures. No piles of gold. Just space, intentional, intimidating space, centered around a single raised platform. And on that platform stood the queen. She was taller than he expected, her posture effortless, like gravity itself deferred to her convenience. Dark iridescent patterns traced along her skin, shifting subtly when she moved. Her gaze settled on him with the calm focus of a predator that had never once known hunger. Daniel reminded himself to breathe. He stepped forward, placed the case on the polished floor, and offered the handshake he had practiced. She did not take it. Instead, she studied him. "Human Daniel Foster," she said, her voice smooth and resonant. "Your species shows promise. Adaptive. Cooperative. Irritatingly resilient." "Thank you," he said automatically. A pause. Then she descended the steps toward him. No guards moved. No attendants spoke. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. "To prove your allegiance," she said, stopping an arm's length away, "you will mate with me tonight." Daniel smiled professionally. "Excellent. I anticipated a binding ceremony of some kind." He knelt beside his case, flipping it open with practiced efficiency. "I've prepared several frameworks outlining mutual defense clauses, trade pathways, and cultural protections. If you'll allow me just a moment." She did not look at the tablet. She looked at him. Not past him. Not through him. At him. There was no negotiation table. No witnesses. No scribes. Just the two of them in a chamber large enough to swallow cities. Slowly, deliberately, she stepped closer. Too close. Daniel's voice faltered for the first time in his professional career. The slideshow contains visual aids. Her head tilted slightly. You misunderstand. Something cold slid down his spine. This wasn't ceremonial language. This wasn't metaphor. His brain, loyal to procedure even in crisis, began flipping through possibilities at alarming speed. Remain calm. Do not insult the galactic superpower. He straightened his jacket. Well, he said carefully, on Earth we believe strong alliances benefit from structure. We have structure, she replied. She reached out, not touching him, but close enough that he could feel warmth radiating from her hand. Tonight you join your lineage to mine. Our species will be bound. Lineage. Bound. Oh no. His heartbeat thudded loudly enough he was certain the guards could hear it from orbit. Think, Daniel. Diplomacy was, at its core, the art of buying time without anyone realizing time was being purchased. He drew in a slow breath and lifted a finger politely. On Earth, he began, we traditionally start these processes by meeting the parents. Silence expanded across the chamber. The Queen blinked once. Explain, parents. Encouraged by the lack of immediate execution, Daniel pressed on. They are the individuals responsible for one's upbringing. Approval is culturally significant. She considered this with the seriousness of someone evaluating a new military doctrine. Your parents are leaders? Oh no, Daniel said quickly. My mother runs a bakery, and my father once declared war on a lawnmower. Another pause. For mating, she said slowly. You require their authorization. Yes, he lied smoothly. Ideally after a 3 to 5 business day waiting period. Business day? He nodded with confidence he absolutely did not feel. And naturally there are consent forms. Quite a few, actually. The Queen's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in concentration. No species has ever introduced conditions. Humans are detail-oriented. She circled him once, studying him like an unexpected puzzle. Instead of irritation, something far more dangerous appeared in her expression. Curiosity. Very well, she said at last. You will educate me on these human courtship requirements. Daniel nearly sagged with relief. Step 1, survive the evening. Step 2, figure out how to warn his parents that the most powerful being in the galaxy might soon ask to sample their blueberry muffins. As he gathered his tablet with trembling hands, the Queen spoke again. Human. Yes? When do I meet these parents? Daniel felt all the blood leave his face. The silence that followed her question stretched long enough for Daniel to briefly consider whether pretending to faint might qualify as a diplomatic maneuver. When do I meet these parents? His mind sprinted through catastrophic possibilities. Orbital fleets hovering politely above suburban Ohio, royal envoys analyzing his mother's cinnamon roll recipe for hidden political meaning, his father attempting small talk with a being who had ended 3 planetary rebellions before breakfast. Soon, he said, because panic was never an attractive trait in negotiations. But human tradition encourages a gradual progression. The Queen watched him with that unnerving stillness. Define gradual. Measured emotional escalation, he replied immediately, inventing the phrase with the confidence of someone who hoped no one would ever ask for a definition. She considered this as though it might replace her empire's existing military doctrine. No species has ever delayed mating once commanded, she said. Yes, well, Daniel said, adjusting his tablet. Humans get nervous if we skip steps. Builds unnecessary pressure. Leads to awkward long-term outcomes. Awkward, she repeated thoughtfully. He nodded. Catastrophic for morale. That seemed to resonate with her. Very well. You will instruct me. He blinked. I will? You introduced the conditions. Therefore, you are the authority. Somewhere deep in his training, A voice screamed that he had just accidentally become the galaxy's foremost expert on human romance. He cleared his throat. The first stage is usually familial awareness. Not necessarily a full visit, more of a conceptual approval window. Her eyes sharpened. Transmit their location. Let's not invade Ohio, he said quickly. I did not say invade. You didn't have to. She folded her hands behind her back, posture regal even in curiosity. What are they? My parents? Friendly. Opinionated. My mother will absolutely try to feed you until you achieve structural failure. Feeding is a dominance display? No. It's love. That word lingered between them, unfamiliar but not unwelcome. The Queen turned slightly toward the guards at the chamber's edge. Record this. Humans demonstrate affection through nutritional excess. A guard nodded once, utterly serious. Daniel rubbed his temple. Humanity was going to be studied forever because of things he was making up under duress. Next, he said, seizing momentum, we typically observe a waiting period. For what purpose? Anticipation, he answered. Anticipation increases bonding hormones. Also reduces impulsive decisions. She stepped closer again, gaze intent. You are attempting to reduce my impulsivity. I would never phrase it that way. You implied it. He offered a diplomatic smile. To be fair, you did command mating within 30 seconds of meeting me. Another pause. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of her mouth lifted. Not quite a smile. But dangerously close. You are unusually direct for prey, she said. Humans are big on communication. Explain the forms. He almost laughed from relief. Paperwork was safe territory. Yes. Consent documentation. Very important. Ensures both parties enter the arrangement willingly, with full psychological readiness. You believe I would compel unwilling participation? Her voice cooled by half a degree, and Daniel felt the entire chamber tense. He raised both hands slightly. Not at all. It's symbolic reassurance. Humans like saying yes out loud. Preferably several times. Sometimes in writing. She studied him again, and then nodded once. We will implement the forms. A guard immediately began etching notes onto a thin panel of light. Daniel wondered if he had just rewritten imperial law. No, she said. You mentioned verbal courtship. Ah. The dangerous part. Yes. Often initiated through what we call pick-up lines. Weaponized language? Hopefully not. She straightened, clearly preparing. Human Daniel Foster, she declared in a voice that could have commanded armadas. Your genetic structure is acceptably efficient. I would not regret merging bloodlines. He closed his eyes briefly. We may want to workshop the tone. It was insufficient. It sounded like a performance review. She frowned slightly. Demonstrate. He hesitated. Teaching flirtation to the most powerful being in the galaxy had not appeared anywhere in his career projections. All right, something lighter. Perhaps observational humor. He gestured vaguely. If you were human, you might say, is it just me, or did the gravity increase when you walked in? She tilted her head. Gravity did not increase. It's metaphorical. Why state falsehoods during courtship? Because they're flattering falsehoods. Understanding dawned slowly across her features. Ah. Strategic exaggeration. Exactly. She tried again. Human, when you entered, my threat assessment algorithms paused. He considered that. Honestly, that's progress. Nearby guards shifted subtly, clearly uncertain whether humor was permitted inside a throne chamber. The Queen noticed. Explain why they appear distressed. They've probably never heard you attempt a joke. Jokes improve mating success? Historically, yes. She absorbed that with startling seriousness. Then we will cultivate humor. He smiled despite himself. Next tradition? Dancing, he said before he could stop himself. Her gaze sharpened with interest. Define dancing. Rhythmic movement to music. usually indicates comfort and trust. There is no music within the imperial court. Then we improvise. He set his tablet aside and, after a deep breath, hummed the first tune that came to mind, something simple and steady. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, cautiously, she mirrored his small step. The conqueror of civilizations, learning to sway. Her movements were precise at first, almost tactical, but gradually softened as she matched his rhythm. The vast chamber seemed less intimidating somehow. Like this? She asked. Perfect. Perfect implies optimal performance. It implies you're doing great. Something warm flickered in her expression. She turned once, slightly too fast, and he instinctively reached out to steady her. The contact lasted less than a second. Yet neither pulled away immediately. You touched me without fear, she observed quietly. I figured if you wanted me dead, you wouldn't bother with dancing lessons. A sound escaped her then, sudden and bright. She froze. The guards froze harder. Daniel blinked. Was that? I produced an involuntary vocalization. You laughed. The words seemed to surprise her even more than the sound itself. No one has ever made me do that, she said. He felt something shift in the air, not power, but possibility. For the first time since arriving, she did not look like an untouchable ruler. She looked curious, almost lighter. She met his gaze again. Human, she said, voice quieter now. What is the next step in your courtship protocol? He hesitated, realizing with a jolt that he was no longer stalling. Now, he was teaching. And somehow, he didn't entirely mind. For a long moment after the laughter faded, either of them moved. The throne chamber still stretched endlessly around them, banners shimmering with silent victories, guards frozen in disciplined attention, yet the space felt altered, as if something invisible had shifted its gravity. The queen studied him with a focus that no longer felt purely strategic. Human, she said at last. Why are you not afraid? Daniel let out a slow breath. It was a simple question, but it carried the weight of every fleet she commanded. Oh, I am, he admitted. I'm just choosing not to let it run the meeting. You differentiate between feeling fear and obeying it. Most humans learn to, he said. Fear keeps you alert. Connection keeps you alive. She stepped closer again, but the movement lacked its earlier predatory precision. Now it felt exploratory. Connection, she repeated quietly, as though testing a word from a forgotten language. Your species prioritizes it above dominance. We don't always get it right, Daniel said. But yes. Alone, we're fragile. Together, we're annoyingly hard to wipe out. Something like approval flickered in her eyes. I have reviewed your species' conflict history. You form alliances even with former enemies. Especially with former enemies, he said. Shared survival tends to speed up the friendship process. She circled him slowly, not as a hunter now, but as someone assembling a puzzle. I was not raised to understand such behavior. He glanced at her. Raised might not be the right word. She was silent for several seconds before answering. I was engineered. The word landed heavier than any declaration of conquest. My predecessors believed rulers should not be shaped by unpredictable emotional variables. I was designed for clarity, endurance, and command. No childhood? He asked gently. I emerged into instruction. Strategy tutors. War simulations. Governance models. She paused. Affection was considered inefficient. Daniel tried to picture a life without scraped knees, embarrassing school recitals, late-night conversations, or anyone telling you it was okay to fail. That sounds quiet, he said. It was effective. Not the same thing. She looked at him sharply, but there was no offense in her expression, only recognition. No one has ever contradicted me so calmly. Occupational hazard, he replied. A faint curve touched her mouth again. Explain something, human Daniel Foster. When I commanded you to mate, you resisted without defiance. Why? He considered the question carefully. Because you weren't asking for loyalty, he said. You were asking for submission. Humans cooperate better when they're choosing the bond. Her gaze sharpened, absorbing every word. You would have refused. I would have negotiated, he corrected gently. Silence settled again, thoughtful this time. After a moment, she extended her hand, palm upward. In my species, before a union, there is a preparatory convergence, she said. A brief exchange of memory patterns. It allows each participant to assess the other beyond deception. Daniel blinked. You can share memories? Temporarily. It is not invasive. You may withdraw at any time. He hesitated only a second before placing his hand above hers. Warmth spread instantly, not heat exactly, but a sensation like stepping into sunlight after a long winter. The chamber dissolved. Suddenly he stood within vast starfields, seeing through her perception, fleets aligning with mathematical perfection, worlds surrendering without bloodshed, the hum of an empire functioning like a single organism. There was pride there, but also distance. No laughter echoing through corridors. No messy celebrations. No one running toward her, only bowing away. Then the memories shifted. She saw his. A small kitchen filled with the smell of sugar and butter. A woman pressing a warm pastry into his hands despite his protests that he was late. A man crouched beside a dismantled lawnmower, insisting he could definitely fix it this time. She felt scraped elbows, exam nerves, friendships formed over nothing, grief that hollowed and healed, and a truly catastrophic attempt at karaoke that made her recoil. The link snapped gently apart. She drew in a sharp breath. You willingly preserve memories of that singing? Some scars teach valuable lessons. Her expression had changed completely now, not unsettled, but awed. Your emotional spectrum is immense, she said quietly. You experience joy and sorrow with equal intensity, yet continue forward. We don't really have a choice, he said with a small shrug. Life knocks you around. So you build bonds strong enough to get back up. She looked down at her hand, as if expecting it to still hold echoes of those memories. My people eliminated such volatility generations ago, she murmured. We believed it weakness. And now? I begin to suspect it is resilience. The admission hung between them, fragile and profound. After a moment, she asked softly, If you had been given a choice, before arriving, would you have come here? He thought about the question longer than any negotiation clause he had ever reviewed. At first? Probably not, he admitted. You're terrifying. Her brow lifted slightly. But now? She asked. He met her gaze without diplomatic filters. Now, yes. The quiet that followed felt different from all the others, warmer, almost sheltered. For the first time, she said slowly, this union does not feel like an order. It shouldn't, he replied. Partnership works better than obedience. She studied him as if recalibrating something deep within herself. In every recorded encounter, other species sought my favor out of fear, she said. You seek understanding. Fear is a terrible foundation for anything long-term. A hint of amusement returned to her eyes. You continue to advise me. Occupational hazard, he repeated. She stepped closer, not looming now, simply near. Then allow me to choose something without protocol, she said. He waited. Her voice softened, losing the last edge of imperial command. Remain tonight, she said. Not because I decreed it, but because I would know more of this connection you describe. A slow smile touched his face. I'd like that. Somewhere in the chamber, a guard shifted, the smallest breach of discipline yet, sensing the transformation even if they could not name it. The queen lifted her chin slightly, but her eyes remained on him. Human, she said quietly, you have altered the trajectory of an empire without issuing a single threat. He chuckled. Don't underestimate paperwork. It's terrifying in its own way. That sound, his laughter, answered hers, and for the first time in her engineered life, the queen did not feel alone at the center of her own vast power. And without announcement, without command, the mating ceased to be a political mechanism. It became a choice. By the time the ceremonial hour approached, the entire imperial court had descended into a state that could only be described as controlled confusion. No one said it aloud, of course. This was an empire built on precision. Shock was processed silently here. The original decree had been simple. The human would mate with the queen to symbolize humanity's submission. Instead, rumors now spiraled through the palace like solar flares. The human had introduced conditions. The queen had delayed the command. There had been dancing. One junior strategist reportedly requested reassignment after witnessing what he described as rhythmic swaying without tactical objective. Now the vast ceremonial chamber filled with advisors, fleet commanders, and royal scholars who stood in perfect formation beneath a ceiling alive with slow-moving constellations. Every eye fixed on the raised platform. Daniel stood beside the queen, trying very hard not to look like someone who had accidentally wandered into the wrong wedding. He tugged subtly at his formal jacket. "You know," he whispered, "in human ceremonies the participants are usually briefed." "You are briefed," she replied calmly. "I was told not to panic." A useful instruction. He exhaled slowly. She had chosen attire that balanced regality with something unexpectedly understated. Fewer armor-like adornments, more flowing metallic fabric that shimmered when she moved. The effect was less conqueror, more sovereign. Less distant. "Before we begin," Daniel said quietly, "there is one final human tradition." Her eyes shifted toward him with immediate focus. "State it." "A toast." She stilled. "Define toast." "A symbolic drink shared to honor the partnership and future." Her gaze moved to the attendants. "Prepare this toast." Moments later, a delicate crystalline vessel was presented, filled with a pale, sparkling liquid. Daniel smiled. "Perfect." The queen lifted the glass. The bubbles rose rapidly. She narrowed her eyes. "It is reacting." "That's normal." "It appears to be attempting escape." "It's carbonated." She tilted the glass slightly closer, watching the effervescence with clear suspicion. "Is it alive?" "Only socially." The nearest admiral stared straight ahead with the intensity of someone reconsidering every life choice that led them here. Daniel lifted his own glass. "You just say something hopeful," he murmured. She considered this, then raised the vessel. Her voice carried effortlessly across the chamber. "Today we alter the pattern of conquest. Strength has built this empire, but strength alone does not sustain it." Every listener froze. "We stand with humanity not as subjects," she continued, "but as allies." The word rippled through the chamber like a gravitational wave. Allies. Not conquered. Not absorbed. Allies. Daniel felt the moment land, history pivoting quietly beneath their feet. She turned slightly toward him. "This human taught me that loyalty chosen is stronger than loyalty forced," she said. "That connection is not inefficiency, but endurance." He lifted his glass. "To partnership," he said. She echoed the gesture. "To partnership." She took a measured sip, and immediately blinked as the bubbles struck. "It bites." He coughed to hide a laugh. "You'd get used to it." After a brief pause, she took another sip, clearly unwilling to be intimidated by a beverage. Somewhere behind them, a scholar fainted discreetly. As the ceremony continued, its structure no longer resembled the Empire's traditional dominance ritual. Instead of kneeling, Daniel stood beside her. Instead of vows of obedience, they spoke mutual commitments: trade, protection, shared knowledge, cultural exchange. Shock gave way to something quieter in the court: reluctant fascination. Empires conquered. This was something else. When the formalities ended, the crowd slowly dispersed, though many lingered just long enough to confirm the universe had not tilted off its axis. At last, the chamber grew still again. Daniel released a breath he felt he had been holding since entering orbit. "So," he said lightly, "on a scale from 1 to galactic incident, how disruptive was that?" She glanced at him. profoundly. Sorry. Do not be. A faint warmth touched her expression. Stagnation is the enemy of lasting rule. They began walking toward a quieter corridor, their footsteps echoing softly. After a moment she said, Your species continues to surprise me. We specialize in that. You fear me less now. He considered it. I respect you more now. She seemed to weigh that distinction carefully, and approve. And you? He asked. Still think humans are irritatingly resilient? Yes, she said without hesitation. But I begin to understand why. They reached a balcony overlooking the capital. Night spread across the world below, lights threading through the vast structures like constellations brought to ground. For a while either spoke. Then she said quietly, All my existence, others approached me with calculation or dread. You approached with invitations. Parents. Waiting periods. Humor. He smiled. Works better than warships. I believed power required distance. She continued. Yet distance is a lonely architecture. He leaned lightly against the railing. Connection is riskier, he said. But it's also where the good stuff lives. She looked at him then, not as a ruler evaluating an asset, but as a woman studying the improbable person who had walked into her empire with paperwork and changed its trajectory. You are still afraid of my battle form, she observed. I've seen the recording. You grow extra limbs. I feel that's a reasonable concern. You snore, she countered calmly. He straightened. Memory exchange was supposed to be confidential. A glimmer of amusement surfaced again. It was becoming a familiar sight now. Comforting, even. Below them, ships traced silent paths through the sky. Tell me something, she said after a moment. When do I meet these parents? Daniel nearly choked on nothing. You remembered that? You stated it was essential. He ran a hand through his hair. There will need to be preparation. I will prepare. No fleets, he said quickly. A pause. A small fleet. No fleet. She considered, then inclined her head. Very well. We will arrive peacefully. He groaned softly. My mother is going to try to feed you until you achieve structural failure. You have said this. I wish to experience it. He glanced at her, then laughed, a full, unguarded sound that drifted out into the alien night. She listened to it, and something within her, something never engineered, never programmed, settled into place. Far beyond that balcony, signals already raced across the galaxy carrying the news. Humanity had not been conquered. It had been welcomed. Not through superior firepower. Not through intimidation. But through the quiet, stubborn strength of emotional courage. The galaxy had long believed humans survived because they fought harder than anyone else. It was only now beginning to understand the truth. Their greatest weapon was connection. She looked toward him once more. Human Daniel Foster. Yes? I find myself anticipating what other traditions you have neglected to mention. He smiled slowly. Well, there's one about embarrassing childhood stories shared at family dinners. She nodded thoughtfully. I will study these weapons. He shook his head, still smiling, and together they watched the dawn begin to edge over a world that, for the first time in its imperial history, felt a little less cold.